When you've experienced something like that, that's so physically disconnecting and harming to the mind, the body, and the soul, it's almost impossible to carry on living. But it's only when you're down that you reinvent and redefine. You wake up with nothing and you go, fuck, what's this all about? There was a moment in my early childhood that everything was aligned, in love and loved by the world and everybody in it. How can I get back to that space? And that's this.
And I'm wondering how these people helped you feel again.
By daring to look in a mirror. How can I myself become as proud and as beautiful as the people that I see and meet? And that became the journey.
A lot of these people you couldn't speak directly with. How did you approach connection with those people?
The communication comes from being in a submissive place. I'm lost, I'm hungry, I'm afraid, I need your help.
Did you feel a lot of fear in those moments?
Always. Yeah, you walk into situations, go, what the hell am I doing now? And then the fear dissipates. Then there becomes a curiosity. He's not a threat to us. And then it becomes a dance. You start to raise them. Shh, don't move. Raise your chin. There's the light there. Then you get into this moment of seeing. I see you. I see you. You're amazing. And making a picture like this takes days. Days.
So I'm very curious, if you would have to make a photo of me right now, in this light, in your studio, where would you start?
Good question. I would start with...
Yes, and welcome to Make. My name is Chris. I'm a filmmaker, photographer. And in this podcast, I speak to creators that inspire me. And today I have a very special guest. It's one of my favorite artists in the world. It's the one and only Jimmy Nelson.
I hope it's a small world.
It's a small world, and I hope it's going to be bigger today, even richer. Jimmy is an artist who uses a multitude of mediums to tell stories about the essence of humanity. And I think he's one of the most fascinating guys I've ever met. Someone who has seen all colors of life, from experiencing sexual abuse by priests and losing all of his hair at age 16, to traveling the world for years, documenting the most fascinating indigenous tribes and cultures all over the world. His work and his famous books has spread all over the world and has touched thousands of hearts and souls. Yeah, he is a true artist and storyteller, and I just can't wait to dive into everything he has found and learned over the years. Jimmy, welcome to Make.
Thank you. Colorful beginning.
Colorful beginning.
As you just described it, sort of the two ends of the universe. We have a lot to cover. But thank you for the compliments. I hope I can live up to your and the listeners' expectations.
I'm sure you will. Yeah, it's two ends of the spectrum, and also a lot happened in between that.
I think it's a good beginning. Two ends of the spectrum. We'll dive into it deeper because they're profound edges of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The journey's not finished, old cliche. I'm right in the middle of it now. I'm sort of 55 and I'm sort of banking on another 50 years, inshallah. Wishful thinking. But I think if you're looking at the 250 years and you're looking at the two stories of the extremes of the spectrum, it's about a balance.
Yeah.
If you switch that into the analogy of my past and my childhood with the priests and the school and who I am today, the disbalance was so extreme. When you've experienced something like that, that's so physically disconnecting and harming to the mind, the body, and the soul, it's almost impossible to carry on living, let alone in a healthy human way, because the experiences is so extreme. So you have to deep dive in on another journey, into another search. And the deep dive is this unending fascination with other human beings that are, in my opinion, nowadays, perhaps wealthier than we are, better connected, better rooted. They stand with themselves, with one another, with cultures, with wisdom, with mysteries, with stories, and in the natural world in ways that we've long forgotten. So I had to deep dive into that world to realign and re-understand myself, to find a sustainable way of living, to come back to feeling, to come back to emotion, to come back to kwetsbaarheid, to vulnerability, to laughter, love, and pain. So the camera is a metaphor, is a medium to carry on that journey to readdress that balance. So you and I, we will use all the new technologies that we've been given on a daily basis, and they're thrilling, but we can't forget what it is to be human. We can't forget what it is to feel, to hurt, to love. We were talking about it earlier, to laugh and to aspire and to dream.
We both fell in love last year, so we talked about it.
No, I'm still falling in love today, but I met 2.5, 3 years ago. But almost last year. But and that's that journey. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because I only ask like one question, and you just start with all of your energy, and that's also what really struck with me the last time I spoke to you. You're always full of energy, and it seems so full of life. And I would love to know, like, what initially sparked your unending curiosity for the world and to explore all of these places.
It's a very, very good question. And we're sitting here in the light, so to speak. If you want to know where I get my energy, my enthusiasm from, my lust for life, it's leaving the dark, going to the light, in a metaphor. But the story began before I was in the dark. I was already in the light.
7 years long, I was in the light.
7 years. So I was, as a kid, I was born 55 years ago. My father was a geologist, very weird guy. He's passed, very autistic, highly academic, and he loved the world. But he loved the geological world. He was obsessed with the history, the layers of rock that is our foundation. Okay. He spoke about 15 languages, but he could never look at you. He could never touch me. He never said, I loved you. But he
never looked you in the eyes.
No, but he learned the languages because it was about learning, but not about what you do or about communicating with human beings. So he wasn't very good with humans, let alone with me, but he loved his hammer and rocks. So before I was born, he lived for 9 years in the Antarctic, working as a geologist. When he was 29, he came back to the UK, got married, had me, and he ended up working for Shell, and he traveled around the world. So every year he went to a different country on a different continent, and he took me with him. I always describe those formative years as I get older, I try and connect with them and feel them even more. And I often describe it like the feeling of being Mowgli from Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book.
Yeah.
A little child, free, connected, in love and loved by the world and everybody in it. All children have this extraordinary ability to open arms, open heart and open eyes to ontvang alles. That's how I felt my formative years. So whatever country I went to, Africa, West Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Iran, Pakistan, Congo, I was fine. I was completely fine. Everybody saw me, I saw them, and I felt safe. When I was 7 years old, they said, well, you're going to have to learn to read and write. We're going to send you to another tribe. They didn't say another tribe, but we're going to send you to another island.
Back to England.
Back to England. But I'd never been in England, so for me it wasn't back to England. It was just another destination to a school, a kostschool, a boarding school. I didn't question it. I just thought, hey, another journey. I get on a plane and I'll land and there'll be lots of nice people there waiting.
With your curious eyes.
Waiting for me. But I landed in an institution. If there was a picture, it looks like Hogwarts. In Northern England, 1,000 boys, no females,
wow, ranging
from the age of 6 to 18, and 400 Catholic Jesuit priests. It was essentially a sort of a seminary, and I arrived, big heart, big arms. Hey, I'm here, I'm Jimmy. And within that 400 priests, a small percentage had decided to use and abuse the secrecy and the intimacy of that environment and the vulnerability of little children. The English culture at that time, as has now been discovered, there were a lot of secrets, and I became part of that secret. So a number of us were severely abused as little kids. I was prime fodder. There wasn't a better child to do that with than me, because I loved everybody and everything.
So open.
So open. After the abuse, it lasts a short period of time, about 2 years, I was told, this is our secret. You're never to tell this to anybody. And what we did to you is your fault. You made us do this to you. And we will save you. We will exercise you. But this is going to be our secret, and you have to carry it forever. So as a little child of 8 or 9, you think, well, this is my secret. You don't know any different. And you go into lockdown. You only begin to feel the secret when you enter puberty. Because as a young child before puberty, you disconnect emotionally, you just grow, you don't feel anything, you don't have to feel anything. But I felt there was something wrong. I didn't communicate this with anybody. And I got to the age of 16, puberty, transitioning from child to adult, and things were beginning to change. And I began to feel extremely uncomfortable. That in combination with being told you're stupid, because very creative, a little bit autistic, very dyslexic. And so you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you act a bit strange. Then I became ill with malaria. I traveled back from the Congo, so high temperature. When you have fever, you're even more vulnerable. So extreme stress, extreme secrecy, high fever, wrong medicine, everything exploded. I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror, I had no hair. 90% of my hair had fallen out. Now, as a middle-aged white dude, it's actually fine because half of Amsterdam walks around with no hair these days, middle-aged or not. So sort of I become from the being a freak to the ordinary. But as a 16-year-old, it wasn't just the aesthetic change. It was this, I was coming out insofar as there's something different about you. You're weird, you're strange, you're ugly. I wasn't necessarily ugly, but I felt like shit. So I can't hide. I can't hide anymore.
It represented also from the outside.
Represented nudity. It represented vulnerability. Everything that I wasn't allowed to feel and show, I was forced into that situation. So everybody staring, everybody looking, everybody poking. Oh dear, there's something strange about you. Well, and honestly, I have this secret, but there is something wrong with me. I can't put it into words. I don't understand what happened. And it's a tipping point. So you've got two channels to go down. You can either sort of not deal with it, bury it, and disappear forever. Or you can realize, okay, well, there's something wrong, but I'm going to have to resolve it. I'm going to have to redefine it. And I'm going to have to be radical. Again, I'm 16 and 17. So this is an autodidactic, organisch groei, een begrip. So with age, you reflect and you can put it into words and categories. As a teenager, you're flying by the seat of your pants, metaphorically. How the fuck am I going to function looking and feeling like this?
Where do I go?
What do I do? Yeah. I can't think. I can't, I'm stupid. I'm not, but all these things. Yeah, and I look like, and I feel like. So the magic began, and this is where we leave the darkness. And from now on, the podcast comes into the light, but we're going to begin very gradually. I had an avatar as a kid. And obviously we're talking about a generation where nothing was digital. But my savior was, and the saving stories were the stories of Tintin. Kuifje. So when these priests used to come at night, I used to literally disconnect from myself and my body and become Kuifje. I had this sort of out-of-body experience. And Kuifje traveled the world on his adventures with Professor Gerolitis and his little dog Snowy. And I thought, okay, here I am. What would Kuifje do? Where would he go looking and feeling like me? And I thought the best solution was Tibet. And I had Tintin in Tibet, and I had noticed Tintin running around the Himalayas looking for the Yeti and connecting with a whole load of young Buddhist monks who had no hair or who were shaved. So in 1984, I bought a one-way ticket. I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I wanted to punish everybody around me. And I disappeared off to China.
Not even your parents?
No. And interesting, I didn't know it at the time, Tibet had been in lockdown for 30 years. The Chinese had moved in 1952. The Chinese had decided Tibet is ours. The rest of the world had gone, nothing to do with us. The Chinese are more important. And for 30 years, we as the developed world had forgotten Tibet. As I was a young, naive, lost teenager, dressed as a monk, feeling like God knows what, I walked into Tibet in the back door, metaphorically. And nobody stopped me. I didn't care. And I disappeared into a world of the beginning of the adventure that I'm still on. A world of, by being so vulnerable and by being so non-consequential with anything I did or any decisions, you fearlessly enter into a realm where you're told you're not allowed to go. And because of that, I was so open for everything that was going to happen to me because I had nothing to lose.
Yeah. So you did feel less vulnerable in a new context.
But it was a case. It wasn't even vulnerability anymore. I didn't care.
Nothing.
Anything is better than the way I look and feel.
Okay.
Anything. And maybe there's a little voice which is still peeping away in the background. There's somebody somewhere in the world who'll see Jimmy. Like I felt when I was a young child.
Could you still see the potential of Jimmy, or did you lose that?
You couldn't see it, but you felt it. There was a moment in my early childhood that everything was aligned. How can I get back to that space?
Yeah.
I have to submit to the other.
And did you believe you could find it back?
This is a long time ago. And I was a teenager. It was sort of, in hindsight, I didn't know what I believed or didn't know what I was doing. I was just following an instinct. But an instinct buiten de regels, buiten de sporen, buiten wat mag of moet. Just an organic search to connect with another human being. And what happened was I came into a country in lockdown, a country in pain, a country that I had an empathy with. I was in lockdown. I was in pain as an individual. And we found each other. Extremely kind, extremely warm, extremely loving, rich human beings, having had everything taken away, but having everything to give. And they picked me up, they fed me, they guided me, they housed me, they taught me, and I fell in love for the first time. And those were the first few pictures I made. They didn't know I was in love with them. The first cover of the first magazine I published in 1988 was of a very beautiful young Tibetan woman who I was obsessed with. And she had no idea, but it was this, here is another beautiful human being who lets me see her, lets me idolize her, lets me honor her. And she and her family cared for me.
And your camera became a tool to honor those people.
Totally. Yeah, and it was a little old for the Zenit B, a Russian analog camera. I had 4 rolls of Kodacolor gold film. For those of you who are listening, sort of 35mm roll film, negatief. I had no idea how to expose it, so the majority of the exposures didn't work. But a handful of images were okay. They were published when I came back.
Was the one your father gave to you?
Yeah. And then they were published and somebody said, well, you could be a photographer. And that's how it began. So I thought, yes, I was 19. Een klein beetje zakgeld. En ik dacht, ik ga weer weg. I'm going away again. And
before we continue, do you still remember the feeling you first had when you experienced photography and capturing those souls?
It wasn't the photography. It was the ontmoeting, the meeting. I see you, and the more you invest in that process, the more you're seen in return. And all I wanted to do was for them to see Jimmy. Jimmy's okay. He's an ordinary, straight, kind, decent, trying to be a loving human being. Don't hurt me. Don't judge me. Don't ostracize me. Just accept me for what I am. And in that context, I'm okay. In that context, I believe we're all okay as human beings. I mean, that's the whole irony of the contemporary world. We're indoctrinated that, we're all... That isn't the case. There are a handful of human beings because of ego and a whole other issues. They hebben de macht. But the rest of us are actually extremely decent. And then you make those meetings and then you're seen, you're cared for. And then you think, well, there must be something about me that's okay. And then the journey began, the journey with the camera. And then for the next 4 or 5 years, it was a journey of how can I form an intimate relationship with human beings who are in positions of pain and danger to align with my pain and danger. So I became a war photographer. War photographer is a big title. I was not busy with changing the world geopolitically, but it was about how can I use my camera to be intimate in a situation where people are living in the present. Any minute now, a bomb may land on their head or they may get shot. So they're alive. They're a lot more alive than anybody ever will be. And that's what I did for the next 4 or 5 years. Until it started to get dangerous, until I started getting cocky and getting closer and closer and closer to the edge, which I would probably never have come back from.
Yeah.
As in death. At an early age. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing this great timeline already. Well, me and of course, I think a lot of listeners know you from your later work, the work we're also seeing here in the background. And what I know is that before you actually went onto all these great journeys and start start these great projects, you also went into commercial photography for like almost 10, 15 years.
Yeah, about 15 years.
You started a family and you had to...
Yeah, I came here, I met my now ex-wife, and I was given a sort of an ultimatum. It was a case of carry on doing this and you'll probably die young, or take some responsibility. Let's start a family together. And that's how the journey began. So in my mid-20s, I came to the Netherlands here, and I had 3 extraordinary children. I was working as a commercial photographer. I was doing what you see here as a hobby. It wasn't perceived to be serious, let alone financially viable, but it didn't matter to me, but it was something I did on the side. I became very early disillusioned with commercial photography, as we've all becoming nowadays, about how we use and abuse contemporary society. The world was changing. We were leaving analog and entering digital. So Jimmy als een vakfotograaf was beginning to diminish. And I could feel it coming. I could see een aantal van de oude garde qua fotografie. They were really beginning to panic. Our whole profession is going to disappear. And then it was when my son was 7 years old. I can remember the day. And I was beginning to feel extremely insecure. My marriage was beginning to rock, let's say, without going into too much detail. And my now ex-wife came up to me and she said, why can you display love and affection to your daughters but not to your son? You're passive-aggressively hurting your son. And I was in denial. I'm fine. He's got to become a man. He was 7 years old. And she smartly said, well, something happened to you when you were 7 for you to treat your own son in this particular way. And I denied it. And he would look up at me, this very beautiful little boy. He's an even more beautiful adult today. And he's going, but Dad, all I want you to do is hold me. And for one reason or another, I had issues with that until one day he came up to me and held me and wouldn't let go. And then ben ingestort. Because the realization that something happened to me when I was 7, I had denied this for 30 years. I had all those memories and experiences were in a deeper bunker covered in concrete. And by the growth of my son leaving childhood and slowly becoming a young adult, he confronted me to what I had experienced when I was 7. And that was the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning. To cut a long story short, I sort of woke up after many days of tears and realization and decided I had to go back to my source. And that's this. And it was a tipping point in many ways. It was a tipping point to realize that the only way to become a healthy adult was not to lean on somebody else or blame other people. It was to reflect on me and to look for beauty in the world, human beauty, and hopefully aspire one day to feel it as a mirror. How can I myself become as proud and as beautiful as the people that I see and meet? And that became the journey. And that's the end of the podcast.
Thank you for watching. Well, and of course that's a painful and confronting, but also beautiful insight, because it's the beginning of the new, very new, important chapter. Yeah, but so you had this new goal for yourself. I want to go back to this pure beauty of the world and show that to the world and celebrate that beauty. But where do you then to start to make it happen? Because you had this family. It wasn't easy to make that switch, right?
It's never easy, but it's life is a sort of, I describe it as a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Once you get into that roller coaster, it becomes quite exciting. And you say, well, I have been down before. I've been so down, it was almost unbelievable that I could come up again. But it's only when you're down that you reinvent and redefine and reconnect with the truth. So I'm going to go down again. I'm going to let it take me down. I'm going to essentially become weer terug naar het begin. Because it's only when you're down, you wake up with nothing and you go, fuck, what's this all about? How do I redefine or reinvent or re-begin the journey again?
Why do we have to go so deep?
Because it's only then that you connect. It's only then that you feel. It's only then that it's almost impossible to sustain oneself as an artist, let alone as a photographic artist in the modern world. There are 5 billion photographers. Morgen wordt 6 miljard fotografen op aarde.
Yeah.
You don't begin so unless you feel in a way that's so authentic, so electric, so life affirming. It's impossible to sustain a creative journey in this way. And I think all art and all creation comes from a very, very ingewikkelde achtergrond. Otherwise, you don't connect with it. I'm convinced of this. If you look back in the history of most creatives, there is a drive that comes from somewhere best wel ingewikkeld. And that fire, that realization, that fear, I find enthralling. And then because you've been down there a few times, you're down there when you're 7, you're down there when you're 16, you're down there a few other times. You go, well, I dare go back to that place of vulnerability. I dare walk into the back door in Tibet in 1984 going, I have nothing to lose. I only have to gain. And that's how the journey begins. Yeah.
This makes me think of a few words you said the last time we spoke, and those words really struck with me the last time. And there was just dare to feel. As an artist, one of your only obligations it is to make authentic work is dare to feel.
Yeah, because how you cannot quantify what I do. If you want to go into a studio tomorrow and you decide I want to become a painter, and how will you ever know or make a business plan to validate what you're painting, that one day you can sell it for X amount of money to sustain yourself, to carry on your creative process? You have to disconnect from that idea. You have to go, I have to make paintings, end of story.
Yeah.
And for whatever the price, whatever the cost, whatever the consequences, I have to make paintings. When I am making images, that's how I feel. There are elements of being quite selfish in it. And I now just have lengthy, fascinating conversations with my kids. They're in their mid-20s. To bring them on that journey. It's not that I was abandoning them. I'm still here. I'm still their father. But I had to redefine myself as a father, as a healthy human being. I had to let go of certain things in the past and reinvent and start anew. So I didn't run away. I'm running too. And I use the medium of photography. I use this subject to run into the light, to become the best human being I can be, and that in alignment also to leave a legacy maybe, and also be a father, and maybe a lover and a partner. Yeah.
Last night I opened your first book, Before They Pass Away, and on the first page there's this great quote by yourself. It says something like, when your heart jumps every time your camera makes focus, you're a photographer. When your heart then beats to the rhythm of your life, you've become an artist. And I love that.
Well, thank you for remembering that. I write a lot of stuff, most of it I forget.
It's just your words. And I was curious, when did you feel like you had become an artist instead of a photographer?
I think there's a story I shared last time, and I'm going to share it again. And this is for me the perfect representation of that transition into leaving being a photographer and becoming an artist. I was giving a presentation, the story about all the kids. Yeah?
In Brooklyn.
Yeah, and a whole load of kids not interested in me talking about my journey. And now I'm using an analog 10x8 camera. And one of the kids asked from the audience, sir, can I ask you a question? Are you so old as to not understand how easy life has become? And I was going, I beg your pardon. Then he held up a smartphone and he said, with this, I can spray and pray. The whole world is a photographer now. Why do you make your life so complicated with that analog 10x8 camera on your own with the tripod, with the picture that will or will not be made? And then I realized to these teenagers it was impossible to carry on talking about photography and about the technique. I had to make a segue into another story.
To interest them.
To interest them. So I asked him organically, I said, what's the most important emotion you want to feel? What's at the top of the list tomorrow? And then as all teenagers, ik hoef niks te voelen, I don't need to feel anything. And then I started pushing him. I said, you've just challenged me by calling me this sort of old dude with the tripod. I'm going to challenge you. There is something you want to feel. And to cut a long story short, his cheeks went red and he goes, yeah, okay, I give it. Yeah, there's a girl I want to kiss. And I said, okay, interesting. So everybody starts laughing. Everybody looks up, realizes this is an interesting subject. I admitted I don't know that much about kissing. You guys probably know much more than I do as contemporary teenagers. But let's use it as a metaphor, as an analogy. I'm going to give you 2 options to kiss. And I was quite sort of, if I'm allowed to say, proud of this analogy on the stage. The first option is your option. It's the spray and pray option. Tomorrow morning you go onto the school square and you take your iPhone with you as a metaphor, and you can kiss everybody all day. You don't really have to do anything. You just put your finger on the button and it happens. Zero effort, zero flirt, zero seduction, zero rejection. It just is. What do you think about that? So the whole and spray and pray, spray and pray. I said, great, that's your kiss. Now we're going to talk about another kiss, but this is complicated. So everybody goes silent, and I go, well, unfortunately, it's only about one kiss, and that kiss doesn't have any guarantees either. It may not happen. But let's say you have the kiss. It only lasts 3 seconds, and on the last 3 seconds of the last minute of the last hour of the last day, of the last week, after 3 months waiting, which would you choose? And they sort of looked at me as if I was, retarded. What? Option 1, spray and pray. The easy option, everything all in one go. And you? And I said, well, option 2. Why? Well, because I now realize it's not perhaps the kiss anymore. It's the process. And the more you invest, the further you search, the more pain, rejection, connection, light. Hunt is the wrong word, but it feels like a hunt. The realization that it's perhaps not the kiss that you want, it's the process. And then the realization that you don't ever want the kiss because then the journey's finished. And whilst one is alive for however many days it is, one day or another 40 years, I want to be sustained in that with all the energy and all the light and all the search possible. So my aspiration for a kiss is so big. It has to be so perfect. It has to be so beautiful. It has to be beyond anything has ever seen or felt. Mm-hmm. It's almost unattainable. But once you submit to that, that's when you raise your levels of aesthetic, raise your levels of expectation, raise your alignment with what you're seeing, and you're never satisfied in a healthy way with any pitch you ever make, because it's not the definitive meeting. It's not the definitive beauty. Because if you're really honest, that could be better, this could be better, that could be better. It's only unhealthy when it becomes an obsession. But when you connect with, this is why I do what I do, it enthralls and sustains that unending creative search. That's when you transition into an artist, in my opinion. And that's when whatever you do, you use your feet, your voice, your hands, your camera, your eyes, a paintbrush. When it becomes this life-sustaining force that's perpetual until the day of death, that's when you're an artist. So that was the transition. And then I started I've always used analog, but I went deep into analog 4 years ago when I made with a designer a camera. And this is when I decided to submerge or submit myself to the process and maybe aspire to be an artist. Yeah.
Could you take me back to the first moment you had a little bit of that feeling that you choose to let go of your family and to chase this passion of yours?
Yeah, good question. Let go of my family. I love my family more than anything in the world. They're the first people I think of in the morning and the last people I think of when I go to bed. But I had to let go of the idea that I was a father, society, and they wanted me to be, and a husband, because I was failing in all areas. So I didn't abandon my family. I realigned myself to come back as the best version of an ex-husband and the father of my children, and hopefully maybe the lover of somebody else. Yeah. So it's this sort of realignment and journey back to a truth, an honesty, a purity, a dignity, an elegance that I never wanted to feel. Because if you've gone through what I've gone through as a child, you're indoctrinated, you're worthless, you're shit. So if you carry that feeling through life, it influences everything.
Yeah, of course.
You can fake it for a while. You can cover it over with makeup, with drugs, with alcohol, with praatjes. But unless you go right down and you look at the bottom of the shoe and you go, why did I let myself be put there? Mm-hmm. It's only then that you can come back as the best person that you can be. En je blijft gewoon, maar de zoektocht is om gezond te zijn. And that unending discovery is with the world's last indigenous peoples, because they give me that trust, that space, that time, that connection, that beauty that I'm looking for.
And how did those encounters, those new connection with all these wonderful people, then connected you to your authentic truth again? Like, how did it mirror yourself, or how did it?
Well, you're sitting here today with me in this studio. I dare call myself a photographic artist. I dare hang all these pictures on the wall. I dare ask people to come and look at them. I dare to encourage people to sit and talk about them. Mm-hmm. That's the healing. I never wanted to be in the light. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to be seen. I didn't look in a mirror for 25 years. We talked about stories in before. I had an example. I came across a box last week of letters at my mother from a young lady who wrote to me for a year in my teenage years. And I communicated to the world that I wasn't liked and nobody liked me and I didn't like. Well, there was a very young, very beautiful woman in my teenage years who declared her love for me. And she said, Jimmy, I see you. I love you. I can see you're in pain. Mm-hmm. I can see, I will wait for you. I will look after you. I will heal you. And I do not remember her or those letters.
Yeah.
That's how heavily I indoctrinated myself. I am worthless. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you got these letters, Jimmy, in big text. I'm here. Where are you? I was in lockdown. Severe lockdown as a human being.
Yeah.
I had 2 legs and 2 arms and I procreated and I made 3 kids and I took a few commercial pictures, but I felt nothing.
And I'm wondering how these people helped you feel again.
By daring to look in a mirror, by daring to communicate to you and to the outside world. I'm looking to see something that's so beautiful, that's so extraordinary, that's real, but it's my reality and it's my truth and it's how I see the world, because that's how I feel myself.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it's a projection of how you see the world and how you see the people in the world, because I now feel like this myself. I feel as empowered, as beautiful, as proud, as connected as the Kaluli standing here on the wall. I don't look like them. I don't have a fraction of their knowledge. I don't live like them. But I've seen it and I've felt it, and it's worth being aware of. And that's what I'm trying to communicate. So I didn't discover anything. I've aligned with it because I had to dive deep to find that sustainable self. And when you get there, you levitate and you leave the past and you enter the light, and then it becomes this life-sustaining, self-sustaining force of unending possibilities of how you can see and connect with the world. Yeah.
And talking about connection, so you started these journeys and you went to the most remote places to meet these indigenous tribes. And talking about connection, like a lot of these people, you couldn't speak directly with language because you wouldn't speak each other's language. How did you approach connection with those people? Like
the simpler is not most of them, all of them. I speak 1.5 languages, English en Dinglish. De combinatie tussen Engels en Nederlands en Engels. En ik kan tot 10 tellen in Chinees en Turks. En that's
quite good.
Dat is best wel knap, hè? So I don't speak any languages. It would be a complete and utter a lie to say that I can verbally communicate with any of these people. The communication comes from a very, very different form. It comes from the initial meeting and interaction in being in a submissive place. So traditionally speaking, when we as people from the developed world go to the underdeveloped world, we arrive with attitude, ego, arrogance. If you invert that and actually say, well, I am nothing. I'm lost. I'm hungry. I'm afraid. I need your help. You are the wise ones. You are the strong ones. You are the ones that I need to guide me. That's the initial position to be in. And you can do that by physicality. You can do that by vulnerability. You can do that by submission.
Lowering yourself.
Total submission. That journey organically came from childhood. I'm going to walk into Tibet as nobody. But weirdly, because I walked in as nobody, I was picked up and started to become somebody. If I'd walked into Tibet as an explorer, or as this, or as that, I first of all wouldn't have been let in because I believed I had a status. If you go and you have no status, you just go as another fragile, vulnerable, afraid, lost, searching human being. It's an extraordinary initiation to the meeting because you deflate the fear, you deflate the anxiety, you deflate the animosity, and you go, whatever you want to do, you can do with me. I'm here. Nobody wants to hurt you, but they do want to intimidate you. They do want to warn you, and you submit.
And how? How did they do that?
By physicality, by shouting, kicking, poking, spitting, raising a gun. And then you go, okay, I've lost. A little bit like I had to submit to those priests, whatever. Although I didn't sort of choose for it as a kid. Mm-hmm. And then the heat dissipates, the fear dissipates. There's a curiosity. Okay, he's not a threat to us.
Did you feel a lot of fear in those moments?
Always.
Yeah,
you walk into situations, go, what the hell am I doing now?
Yeah.
But then gradually, if you're patient, the fear dissipates. And then there becomes a curiosity. I'm always sitting down on the floor, I'm looking up, and then there's this, wow. And then the longer you sit, the quieter it becomes, the more observant you are, that you begin to look, you begin to see, and then you begin to dance, and then you begin to worship, and then you begin to praise, and then you dare to touch and go, you're amazing. If you stand up straight and you touch them delicately in the back, and if you lift your chin and there's the light, wow, you look as and the feathers on your head, and then it becomes a dance. And then through voice and physicality and humility and sensitivity, you start to raise them. And then it's often somebody of authority, a chief, and he's seen. And then gradually you get into the dance. Well, I have a camera, and this obviously takes days, and it's an old analog camera. You put it on a tripod, and I need a while to get focused, so I need to come back and move there a little bit like this, and you go back, and this takes hours, like this, and a little bit more. And because it's analog, you only have one opportunity of a picture. A picture you can't see because you've got your head under a doek, and it's omgekeerd en andersom. And you're looking. Shh, don't move. Raise your chin. There's the light there. And then you get into this moment of seeing. I see you. I see you. You're amazing. And then you really begin to see a beauty in everybody.
It was never an act. You always felt like
because
that.
you're looking for that. You're looking for that. And then that is felt. And then it gets thrilling because you need light. Like here. There's light everywhere, but it's not electrical. But then you need the help of the villagers, so I carry a lot of reflectors with me.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like street theatre. So, a few days beforehand, everybody was angry and afraid. And then all of a sudden you're asking, I need your help to shine light on the chief. So you hold them from behind, and you hold the reflector here, and you hold the reflector here.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you have a whole community holding reflectors, capturing the daylight, which is always moving, shining on the chief's face. And then there's this golden glow, and he stands there, and it's about alignment. It's about alignment. And when everything is aligned, you get behind the camera and you say, I need 4 seconds for the shot speed because it's indirect light. Shh, slow. Raise your chin. We're going to breathe through your nose. Breathe through your nose. Look into the light. And we're going to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You ready? And you put the film in. 1, 2, and you make the long shutter. And then if he doesn't move and there's this sort of climax, and the first thing you do is you give the person a hug. But again, that's organic because, something beautiful happened. And everybody starts feeling something
totally
special.
In the moment.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden the sister of the chief comes, and it's my turn to have a picture made, and I'm going to stand in front of this weird guy, and you can see me. And and then the brother and the sister and the aunt, and then they all want to be seen. And then you spend the whole time going, I see you, I see you, I see you, I see you. And then gradually it's sort of, okay, you can hang out with us a bit, and you get closer and closer and closer and closer. And then the pièce de la résistance is this sort of, I humbly describe it as a sort of a signature picture. It's the landscape aligned with the people standing in it. And this moment of how can I define the beauty of the untouched natural world with these people deeply rooted in that environment and in themselves. And making a picture like this takes days. It's insane.
Where's this specific one?
This is in Papua New Guinea with the Kaluli. And you arrive there on the rocks, and you ask them to stand in the waterfall. They won't stand there, so you spend another day carrying all the logs. You build a studio.
Oh my God.
Then you ask them to stand there, but it's 3:00 in the afternoon. The light is too hard, so they need to wait there until 6:00. So the whole time you're running backwards and forwards through the waterfall, waiting for that perfect alignment of light. They're all looking. Then you need 3 seconds in the shutter speed, and as long as nobody moves, and you feel and you can't see the picture, and you think, fuck, I think maybe I have what I felt when I was there.
And you can't even watch it back because it's all analog.
No, but that's beautiful. And then you're in the moment.
That's the search.
You're not behind a computer. You're not about to delete it. You're not. You're feeling it.
Yeah,
it's heaven.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of painting a picture. You stand in front of the landscape, and slowly the sun is setting, and it's not going to happen again, and it just is. Yeah.
For everyone that's only listening to this podcast, I would love to welcome you to also watch the video version on YouTube. Then you can also watch the photos we're talking about. So that's suggested.
Well, the ultimate task is to describe the photos. So let's keep seeing whether it's possible.
Well, yeah, I challenge you.
Yeah, but it's sort of an alignment of a sort of Avatar-esque environment. These tumbling waterfalls coming down through the jungle. Human beings like you've never seen them before in feathered hats that are 1.5 meters tall, standing on top of the head, balanced on these logs in this sort of tumbling waterfall.
Yeah.
And then I'm standing in the waterfall with this analog camera at 6 o'clock in the evening, and you're trying to get the dark contrast of the jungle aligned with the light contrast of the waterfall. It's on film.
How much did these people dress up for the photo, or did they always look like this?
It's a good question. I think in cold environments, people they are dressed that way anyway. In warm environments, so this is tropical, everything that's from the head down, they wear daily, and the headdresses are ceremonial because they're often very big. So
these are mostly ceremonial.
The headdresses, but how they dress, the clothing they have, or the natural clothing they wear is what they wear on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, it's a very good question, but it's not too dissimilar to if a Japanese photographer came to your village and he lived with you for a week. He said, I'm here, I'm going to go back to Japan, and I really want to show you to the Japanese the most beautiful, but I'm going to wait. So, you have your football and you wake up in the morning, you have a couple of dates, you do a little bit of drinking through the week. But then on Saturday, you decide, well, I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to put on a new shirt. I'm going to put it on the ironing board. I'm going to make sure I don't drink the night before so I don't have red eyes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a little bit of sport. And then we're going to make the whole day, and we're going to choose my favorite tree in the garden. Mm. And when the light is just setting over the horizon, I'm going to stand for this Japanese photographer in all my beauty. That's also a truth. Yeah. That's also you. But it's not a reportage stolen moment. It's you being defined in all your power and all your dignity.
Yeah.
I think these images create a lot of discussion because they are so unapologetically beautiful.
So aesthetic.
But we do, as if to say, and I've often heard before, well, this isn't real. First of all, or it's faked, it's digital, it's AI, it's retouched. None of it is. And that's why I used analog to prove on the negative. But at the same time, it's only how we aspire to see ourselves. We've never questioned all the magazines. These beautiful pictures of these aspirational human beings, celebrities, models, singers, dancers, whatever. I'm only doing the same with them in return. Yeah. Don't believe the pictures of Annie Leibovitz, of those Hollywood spreads every year. They look like that 24/7. None of them do. Mm. But we don't question it because that's our aspiration. I want you not to question these pictures. They're not manipulated, but these are aspirational human beings who we should look up to.
And why was it so important for you to make it this aesthetically perfect almost?
Because this is the way I want to feel. Because if I don't feel this way, if I don't feel aligned with myself and my identity, my culture, my aesthetic, the world that I live in, I'm standing here with bare feet, then I'm not in balance and I'm not sustainable and I'm not worthwhile being here.
And as you said, you want to be searching for that kiss.
Yeah, but it's a metaphoric kiss, and it's not a kiss that will ever really, really happen, but it's that alignment of beauty, of feeling.
So even a photo like this doesn't even feel like the kiss.
It comes very, very close to it, but I can see imperfections.
It's still the search.
I can see imperfections, and that zorg that you keep looking. That zorg that, even after 4 books, you decide I need to make another book because I need to take it to a higher level.
But how do you make sure that this doesn't make you restless or not content in life?
Good question. And the answer I try to give to it is up until,
I want to be restless.
But 4 or 5 years ago, I'm always restless, but it's what kind of restless? There's a healthy and an unhealthy restless. I think the day I realized that sort of, I was
running away.
Running away, it's that I'm always running. I'm always running. And I get slower and slower and slower with age, but I'm always running. But up until not so long ago, I was running away. And I think at that moment when my son was 7 and he held me, I realized I had to start running too. Mm-hmm. So I will always run. I will always be restless, but there's positive and there's negative. My restlessness is I am so excited about what I'm going to see and what I can share. I want it to last as long as possible, inshallah, another 40 years. So I have to find a sustainable way to do that. If I do it in an unsustainable way, an unhealthy way, I will crash. Mm-hmm. But that's a metaphor for life. You've got to keep it all in balance.
To go back once more to this, for example, the making of this picture, you just shared beautifully how you approach making the connection and eventually making the photo. But what did you find most challenging in those weeks you spent with those tribes? What was...
I find nothing challenging on the journey.
Really?
I'm in the flow. Every day, every moment is heaven. What I find challenging is aligning this world with that world. How do you sustain the journey? How do you make what I do into an artistic, responsible, sustainable business? That's extremely complicated. How can I, at the age of 55, still validate that I'm now about to start a new project of 4 years, and the investment that's required, and the return that I will make, but also the value to art and the legacy to humanity? How do you do that? That's 10 times more complicated than the journey. Because it's very simple, because each journey you go on, I'm open to serendipity. So I don't go on a journey with a list with a whole load of boxes I want to tick. I just go with open to experience. Mm-hmm. Much the same way as I entered into Tibet. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just went into the process. So every journey I go on, I'm about to leave the day after tomorrow on a journey of a month. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I know the environment and I have expectations, but I'm submitting myself to the process.
So all these pictures is always in combination.
I never knew what was going to happen before I went.
Production and serendipity.
Most of it's serendipity. I knew roughly that these people were there. What will happen when I get there, I don't know. But I give myself to the process. Yeah.
To dive into photography a little bit more, like now you just beautifully described how you made this photo. But I'm also just curious how you approach photography and seeing people. So maybe it's a little bit random, but if you would have to make a photo of me right now in this light in your studio, I'm very curious, where would you start?
Good question. I would start with what is the motivation to make the picture? Then once that's established, a conversation.
Always conversation.
Only conversation. There would be no lights, no cameras, no nothing. We would sit and talk.
Yeah.
And hopefully I would invest in as much conversation as possible.
And why is it necessary?
Because you have to crawl under the skin of somebody. And you have to also share and crawl under my skin. So I have to submit and we have to meet. If I come in with an attitude, an ego, a schedule, a time, I'm Jimmy and I'm going to make a picture of you. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a meeting. I want to put you on a pedestal. I want you to feel seen. I want you to feel loved. I want you to feel acknowledged. I want you to give yourself to me. Yeah. It's a dance. The other day I had this is a sort of segue, but I have a really, really exciting, cool opportunity in Milan, the Palazzo Reale. It's a massive museum opening September the 19th. And a few weeks ago, we had a big meeting with lots of very important people. And it's very Italian. There's lots of dance and nuance. And the major character for this whole meeting was the one that decides everything. And he was a sort of middle-aged man, about 10 years older than me. And I realized I need him. And he was the boss, and he was speaking Italian. I don't speak a word of Italian. But I needed him to see me. I needed him to trust me. I needed him to want to take me by the hand. So the first thing I said is, I have to ask you a personal question. I said, why are you so beautiful? And he was a bit perplexed because he was this, and everybody around the table went like this. And I said, well, the irony is, everything you're talking about is what I'm trying to communicate. This human beings aligning themselves with their beauty. How do you dare sit here as this extraordinary human being. And he started to glow and he's, Jimmy. So, and then for the next, respectfully, 1.5 hours, we had a wonderful conversation with all of us because I lifted him. I didn't come in and go, I'm the artist and you have to perform for me. I went, no, you're the definitive artist. You're everything that my work represents. You're the hero. And how can you enable me? And he opened the door and he said, hold my hand, and off we go.
Wow. That's a good example.
So there was no picture made.
But how is that feeling he got after you saw him? How would that be reflected in his eyes if you would have to make a photo of him?
He would have given me all the time in the world.
Yeah, okay.
That was what it was about. And he had a busy schedule and he was going to give me all the time in the world. So something I really enjoy is, especially in Amsterdam, everybody's taking pictures of themselves the whole day.
Oh, yeah.
And often it's an awkward, let's do this, a selfie, or the father standing here photographing the mother and the daughters. And this is summer in Amsterdam at the moment. And there's not 1 second of one day where there aren't people taking pictures of each other. They're all groups, but they're not whole. So I anonymously always walk past or cycle past and I say, give me your camera. Yeah. And instinctively, everybody always gives it. So you could have quite a nice business. You just sort of cycle away. And they sort of, you walk in and they say, I'm going to make a picture of you. So come and stand together. Right. It's what you want.
Be whole.
It's what you want. And everybody submits.
Yeah.
And then I say, get closer. I'm not going to make it until you're holding each other. I'm not going to, and a couple of teenagers and everybody's a bit sweaty and the mum and dad next together, the kids on the outside. So it's this sort of dance and I love it. And then I start tickling each other and then you make a couple of happy snaps on an iPhone and you give the iPhone and you cycle away. And you look over your shoulder and you look at them looking at their telephone and the joie de vivre, the happiness.
Yeah.
Because does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
So so it's not about the picture with the 10x8 camera or with a smartphone with strangers on the street. It's about the human meeting. I want people to feel seen. I want people to feel acknowledged. I want people to feel connected because it's everything I've wanted to feel. So it gives me an enormous amount of happiness to share that. Yeah. So whether it's with the director of the Palazzo Reale, whether it's with you, whether it's with the Kaluli, whether it's in front of the Rijksmuseum with een hele hoop toeristen, I enjoy the process. The best meetings are with no picture at all.
You really mean that?
The best, and that's a segue to a story I'm going to tell anyway, because I want to tell it. And this, for me, is what it's all about. There was no picture, there's no name, and there's no telephone number, but it's a meeting.
Yeah.
In the autumn of last year, I was launching the Dutch book Between the Sea and the Sky. En ik had besloten om door heel Nederland te gaan fietsen. Te elke boekwinkel. En I thought, ik wil dit. Ik wil 2 months door Nederland. Met de trein, met de fiets. Ik heb een goede vouwbaar e-bike. En halverwege de rit, I began to think, well, this is best wel een pittige onderneming. En heeft het zin? And then something happened to me one morning that aligned and answered this question of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for stories and I'm looking for human beings. And I'm looking for beauty. I'm standing on a platform in Leuven in Belgium. Very early in the morning. Ik moet naar Groningen. It's November, Thursday, wet, dark. Everybody's in black. I'm in black, headphones on. I've got an e-bike on the station, a couple of 100 people. And it is the most disconnected human. In the distance, I see red. It's a bit like your red cap. And then I look closer. There's a lady wearing a red jacket. Oh, interesting. I look even closer. Her hair's pulled up and she's got flowers in it. So iemand heeft de moeite gemaakt. So I look and say, wow, what the hell is somebody where we're all wearing black, we've all got our headphones in, it's raining, it's wet, it's Thursday and we're in Leuven. Why does somebody make so much effort to stand out? So I put my bike on the train and ever the curious, I sort of walk through the carriages and tegenover haar is een stoel. So I thought, great. So I sit down. There's this lady sitting here, halverwege 30, very beautiful. And the first thing she does is she starts folding a white stick. She's blind.
Oh my God, yeah.
And she puts the white stick like this on her lap. And I think, oh my fuck, she's blind. And then I look closely and she's beautiful and elegant and then she opens her bag and then she starts talking, saying, I'm going to need somebody's help today. As you can see, I'm blind and I'm going on a very important meeting. I'm wearing hoge hakken and I'm going to a station I've never been to before. So can please somebody help me, show me where the door is and take me up onto the station platform where somebody's going to meet me. I need your help. Nobody replied. koptelefoon afgesloten. She opens her bag and she gets out her koptelefoon and it's in a knoop. And I thought, okay, well, this is my bridge. So I said, I'm here, excuse me, give me the, I'll undo. Oh, somebody's here. Somebody dares to talk to me, to this blind person. I said, give them to me. And I start unpacking them. And then I said, can I ask you a question? And she goes, yeah. And I said, I'm going to ask this loud, and I don't want anybody to think I'm in any way creepy, but why are you so beautiful? Waarom maak je zoveel moeite?
Yeah.
Her back went straight, her chin raised, her cheeks went red, and she started to smile. And she says, I know I'm beautiful. This is when the magic starts. And I says, I beg your pardon. She says, well, 20 years ago, I was told, you're going blind. You'll never see anything ever again. And I decided on that day I was going to die. But my mother came up to me and she said, we're going to have to go on a new journey together. Or actually, you're going to have to go on it on your own. Because the only way you'll find a sustainable way to live is to see and feel a beauty that none of us will ever connect with.
And you could relate
so
to
she
it.
started as a child. And she asked for the help. And she says, every day I wake up, I ask people to help me to dress, to show. And everywhere I go, people come up to me and say the same as you. You're beautiful. So I know I'm beautiful. And that's what gives me the sustainability to look for the light, which I'll never see, but I feel it in a way most of us will never feel it.
Wow.
And as that story was told, 3 guys came up and kind of help her, and they grabbed her by the arm and they lifted her off the train, and she was like Mary Poppins being carried up onto the station platform. I don't know her name. I didn't get a number. We didn't make a selfie. I didn't make a picture, but that was one of the most beautiful humans I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
But she can't see.
Yeah.
And those are the people I'm looking for. Those are the stories I'm looking for. And those are the moments where you align with yourself. Je hebt niks meegemaakt. You're fine. You're fine. Don't ever complain. Only invest, only see, only celebrate. And that's what pushes you onto this. And then it's not just the picture, it's about the meeting.
Well, thanks for sharing this beautiful story. And what really inspires me about the way you look at true human connection, and it reminds me that I'm still too worried about the end result. And I do a lot of street photography, for example. And I get so excited to see beautiful moments and to capture it. And sometimes even like in a secret way, like people don't even see me because I want to capture the moment. Very often I also go back to the person and show them. But what I'm trying to say is, I think I'm still making myself too important in that interaction. And I'm just, when I hear you speak, it's almost like you have let go of your ego in that way.
I'm in the process of aspiring to let go of it. There is ego in all of us. We're sitting here and I'm talking about myself. That's ego related.
What would you say to me?
Well, another. Okay, what would I say? And I'm always trying to keep the stories as relevant and as present as possible.
Yeah.
I was in the UK last week visiting family, and I was with my kids, and I was with my eldest daughter for a week, and we were reconnecting. And her wish is she enjoys vintage clothing. She's 26, she has a job and study, but she really enjoys looking for vintage clothing. Doesn't really interest me, to be honest. But we decided to go to Portobello Market. So if anybody's into street photography.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Portobello
Last year I was
Market
there.
on a Saturday.
With the flowers, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's and I stood there and I was feeling a little bit, what am I doing here? She was in seventh heaven. And I began to think, and I began to look around me, and I saw some of the most beautiful human beings in this homogenous world that I've seen in years. Just this, I mean, really eclectic mixes of culture and race and color and style and design. I mean, really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I started to look, and I started to listen and to feel and I wasn't angry or I'm not here for vintage clothing, just be present. Mm-hmm. And then 1 hour became 2 hours, and it started to rain, and then my daughter was carrying on further. And then I started to see people I wished I could have photographed. I mean, they were really, and I said to her, wow, I would love to set up a studio here and she goes, well, you don't need to. Just acknowledge the people you see.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? Just go up to them and tell them if you had a camera, you would put them in the light. So for the next hour, that's all I did. And you have to be very careful and very delicate. You know, you're this sort of, excuse me, and I'd like to give you a compliment. I think you look incredible. I love your style.
Yeah.
I love it. And if that's done in a delicate and in a kind and a respectful way, not one person didn't smile from here to here and say, thank you for seeing me.
Yeah. And also because you did
male and female, black or white, young or old. And I thought, the voldoening that gives, and there wasn't a camera involved. It's just about observing and real observation. Yeah. And then I was looking at you, and that could be seen as a threat or as creepy, and I was going, the way you align that scarf with these shoes, the tartan skirt and those socks, fucking cool. And where did you see that? Why do you have the self-confidence to wear this in that way and put the ring here? And then they tell you a story. But as I found this here and I felt this, and that you see it and I see it. And I said, I wish I'd had the confidence you had when I was your age to be so much myself. That's life. That's what I wanted. I was terrified, and you get into these wonderful conversations. I didn't have a camera. So I'm there because I'm there for, if I had a camera, I wouldn't have been given attention to my daughter. We were there to connect. In the end, I let her be in the process, but I entertained myself by observing. She could see me interacting with people. She comes up to me at the end of the day and says, you're a really warm person. I said, I know I am. She said, it's nice to see you in action. But just be me, not be me with a camera. And observant of human beings. Fascinating, watching. Sorry, too many aspects. There was this really cool Rastafarian with dreadlocks everywhere, wearing denim from top to toe, and he ran a store. He had the best music playing, and I was sort of, and I was there in the rain dancing. And he says, I went up to him and said, this music. He says, I have my own podcast, my own Spotify. And he says, it's easy to find. My name is Leslie Love. So I've got the best playlist on my telephone, a playlist I would never have found in a million years by Leslie Love, and 800 of the funkiest R&B songs
Shout out to him.
You've ever heard of, because I went up to someone and complimented him. So I had the best morning, but I didn't make a picture.
But still, I love these stories, and these meetings happen to me also, because I'm also very observant, but still I would always want to make that photo to share it with other people, or to maybe to seek for external validation of myself even. And I think that maybe that's what I mean. I'm way too worried about what other people might think of me, and everything I do, a lot of it comes from my deepest passion, but also quite a bit still comes from my seeking for external validation.
But that's all of us. I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
Totally.
In what way?
Well, but I'm older, and that's time.
And you feel acknowledged.
You feel acknowledged. You feel seen. I gave a keynote talk a few weeks ago to 500 lawyers, and they were all men, and they all had blue suits on, and they all had big, thick watches, and they all had big, fat cars, and they all had big everything.
Very external world.
I mean, really, the alpha successful males, commercial lawyers.
Yeah.
And I stood up and I started the talk and said, I find it amazing to be here, that you've invited me today, because 10 years ago, I wouldn't have dared stand on this stage in front of you. I would have felt like a failure. I have no qualifications. Oh, wow. I have no car.
You would have felt intimidated.
I would have felt, and I am a little bit today, but so you begin in this place of humility. In the same way as you walk into a village, I feel humble to be here in front of you. But you've invited me, so I'm going to take you on a journey. It's an unexpected journey. So you begin from a very humble place, which is real, I admit it. And then you raise and you all rise together. And then you see each other. And then at the end of the meeting, at the end of the keynote, all these people come up to you and says, but you shared this and you shared this, you shared this. And I have this exterior, I have this exterior, I have this exterior, I have this exterior. We're all the same. So what you're feeling is right. It's okay. Just own it, share it, communicate.
It feels so empty.
Communicate. No, but it's there. Communicate it. Share that story with somebody you want to photograph.
Yeah.
Express your utter adoration for.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but deeply analyze why you need it.
That's a good one.
I need to sustain what I'm doing because I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's also a part of it.
But I will admit that I love it, and I will admit that I love the process, and then I now begin to acknowledge that it will create a bit of a legacy. I think the world needs to see these people, needs to see these pictures, needs to hear these stories, and it's a sort of parallel validation. Yeah.
And did all of that validation you have received in the past years, did it also help you to start believing yourself even more and start even being more confident by that external validation?
Yeah, I would be a liar if I said no.
Okay.
You let go of how you think people see you. You let go of how you would like to be seen yourself, and you become Jimmy. And I think that's the search and the objective of everybody. So that is part of it.
Do you feel most Jimmy ever?
I feel most Jimmy when I'm in the middle of nowhere or in the middle of everywhere. That's in the natural world, walking up a valley. What I'm about to do next week, going to Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, walking up into the Pamir Mountains to meet and live with the community. That's where I'm happiest. So, where I'm nobody, I have no authority, I have no wealth, I have nothing, no status, and I have to begin at the beginning, and I have to start on the ground and sit and build. And then I see these extraordinary mountains and horses and yurts and cultures and festivals, and I have to find a way for them to let me in, but let me in a way that requires the ultimate moment behind that camera. I love the process.
It starts all over again in a few days.
Every journey, and it's heaven. And then that's me at my.
And what do you feel this moment? Then you're leaving in a few days. Are you nervous? Are you mostly exciting? What do you feel right now in preparation to this new adventure?
There's the most exciting part, I think, is flying.
Okay.
I will explain. It's about a balance. And I think when you leave this world and you go into that world, by default, I'm using my hands as if I'm flying. Most of us are in a balance, and we're very close here to the middle to make it as easy as possible for ourselves. But my balance is extreme. It's this world and that world.
Yeah.
It's the moment in between. It's the moment I leave here. I leave my home. I leave the people I love. I leave safety. I leave punctuality. And then I'm leaving this world, and then I'm about to arrive in that world. And it's the moment in between. It's usually in the middle of the night when everybody's asleep on the plane or drunk or they're watching movies, and I look out and you see the stars and the silence. And I'm always sitting in the back by the toilet, and you see the curve of the world, and there's that silence. And there's this anxiety of where I'm going to, and there's the sadness of what I'm leaving. And then you land, and then you forget where you've left, and you're in the zone. And then the same happens in return. When you get back on the plane, you've had the most extraordinary adventure, you're still here, and you can reflect as you look out of the window on everything that's happened, and you can reflect on coming back home again. So that's the most pivotal moment. Once I'm there, I'm in it, and it becomes this fearless search. Yeah. And prior to going, no, I'm here. It's that moment in between, in the middle. Yeah.
I think already know the answer a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you hope to find?
Warmth and love.
That's all.
Yeah. I know in these parts of the world, I will be received by people who have nothing but want to give me everything. And in return, I want to say, I see you. That's all I want to receive, yeah. No.
And earlier you mentioned that it's hard to connect that world with the more material world here. Do you think it's possible that we could live a little bit more like those people?
I think the most important thing for every human being, and especially less so for people in the developing world as to the people in the developed world that's here, is to find a purpose. I'm going to cover a lot of history. I think many, many, many years ago, we were indoctrinated. Our purpose was not this life, it was the next life. So religion. Yeah. That was the way to, that was your purpose. Then that was kind of became a little bit disorientated. And then the purpose became sort of consumerism, materialism. The more I have, the richer I become, the fatter I become, the more valid this life is. And now we're beginning to realize, that doesn't work either. And we're fucking everything up in the process. I think the last stop, or the first stop to the new way of being, is thinking, what can I leave as a legacy? Every single thing we do has to be about leaving something behind that's even more beautiful than we've experienced, to enable the human beings that follow us to have as rich and valid a life on this planet for the short period of time that we're here. If we get that into our thick skulls as human beings, we will look after this planet as a whole. And we will enable others to have an even richer journey than we've had as a human being. There is no reason for this journey. We're not going into an afterlife. We're not going to be floating around with wings on our backs. We're just here by biological default. But that in itself is extraordinary and can be outrageously beautiful for the very short period of time we're here. If we aspire to lead the richest, most connected life that we can as human beings, but leave a story or a legacy for others to have an even richer experience after us, then that's how we could all live, in my opinion. It's a bit of a sort of a broad sweeping statement. And that's what I aspire to do. My life gets richer and richer and richer, not in a material way, but in the process of being and feeling and seeing and enabling. I get more and more aligned with my legacy, that is to leave something behind that's unbelievably beautiful. And I would love others to follow in my footsteps, to find their path to do the same. If we do that as human beings, we will care for one another and the planet that we live on in a very, very, very different way. Yeah.
Do you remain to be hopeful that we can
totally
make that switch as human beings?
Totally. I think 99.9999% of us know this.
Yeah.
We just have to feel it, and I feel it by default because of something extreme when I was a kid. So it's not that bad to be on the bottom because only then you feel. So we all have to wake up and feel things. Mm-hmm. If we do that and we get off our high horses of arrogance and ik, me, myself, me and I and ik, then I believe it's possible. Because inherently, we're all that little 7-year-old child who only sees beauty.
Yeah. And for people who maybe don't have the opportunity to go to one of these places, to go off our high arrogant horses, to go, you know what I mean? How can we leave that horse and be more?
I can't tell you as an individual how to do it, but I can share what happens to me. For example, we had the pandemic. I was just about to open the largest immersive experience that we've ever invested in Paris. It was cancelled at the pandemic. But because I was in a good place, because I was waking up looking at the light every morning, not looking at the dark, I realized what I was looking for by using a camera. We created the project Between the Sea and the Sky here in the Netherlands. Meeting, seeing, documenting the klederdracht.
Yeah.
When I first started doing it, everybody said, ja, ik weet het niet. Dat is een beetje oudbollig en mensen zijn daar niet geïnteresseerd in. I didn't mind. I didn't care. It wasn't a business plan. It was just a search to see a cultural beauty binnen fietsafstand because I couldn't get on a plane. So I wanted to sustain the process of looking with a camera to see people in all their beauty.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened. And then a year later, there's a book. And 1.5 years later, 900 people in klederdracht come to the Museumplein, stand there, you see us, we see you. So it happens organically.
My podcast is called Make, and it's I'm on this search to learn as much as possible from other artists, creators, people that create things to enrich the world. And it's not always an easy life, the creative life. I don't have to tell you that. And maybe to summarize also your story, I really want to know, what did you have to overcome in yourself to eventually free yourself as an artist and to be the most free and authentic artist you are right now?
Let go.
Of what?
Let go of ego. Let go of insecurities. Let go of, I often say, we're working here in this studio with 10 people. We're not. We're with 6 or 7. But let's say there are 10 fingers in the studio. I'm the pinky. Yeah. Till not so long ago, I thought I was 8 of the 10 fingers. I'm Jimmy, ik ben de ondernemer, ik ben de zakenman, ik kan alles doen, ik maak ook foto's.
Yeah.
That's not true. I'm just this pinky, and I need all the other 9 fingers to function. The day I admit that, and the day I enable the others to enable me by humility and vulnerability and honesty, is the day the project started to take off. I need you to enable me, and I have to explain to you why I need you to enable me. And then I will enable you in return. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm hopeless at this. I can't do this. But this is the one thing I can do.
Yeah.
And if you help me do this, I'll help you do something in return. Right. So you become a community, and it's about honesty and letting go.
Did you find it hard to admit that?
It comes gradually, and then I often challenge myself. Okay, what if all hell breaks loose? Metaphorically, I can't walk, or what if deze onderneming bestaat niet meer? What would you do? I know what I would do. I would pack up my camera in a bag. I wouldn't have a lot of film because I wouldn't have a lot of money, and I'd just go east. And if I didn't have a bicycle and I was in a wheelchair, I'd roll. Because I know what I'm looking for. And that makes me really happy. And whether it becomes an exhibition, a business, a book, or it just becomes meeting the blind lady on the train, it doesn't matter anymore.
It's all secondary.
It's all secondary, yeah. I'm in that process. It's beautiful. And when you submit to that, the whole world opens up in a different way. And last time we spoke about it, and my colleagues have said, Jimmy, don't go off at a tangent, just talk about love. And we're going to slowly conclude this, but I think it's extremely important because you've met somebody, I've met somebody. That's the definitive plateau. That's what we're all aspiring for in one way or another. But you can't align and do that in the most successful way imaginable until you really love yourself. Until you say, I'm fine and I have something to give. You can't ask and receive in return in the healthiest way possible. That only began to happen to me about 3 years ago. So, but the beauty of that is I've had to wait 50 years. So if you can imagine stretching an elastic, most of us in life, we stretch the elastic halfway and we don't give a shit anymore and we let it go.
Yeah.
If you just keep holding on and holding on and holding on and trusting that one day, but imagine after 50 years, holding on imagine how long the stretch is, that if one day you manage to let it go,
you fly.
You don't only fly, you launch.
That's your energy.
And that's the energy, because I've held on for something so long.
Yeah.
I wanted to give and receive in the healthiest way possible. And about 3 years ago, I was ready. In that process, I took myself into the world to organically look for love. I didn't go on a date. I didn't have an app. I just put myself in a place and said, I'm ready. Yeah. And it happened.
It happened.
And in the most obscure, in the weirdest, in the most beautiful way imaginable.
Yeah.
And I'm now with a partner who you would never in a million years, society would say, but it's so aligned. It's incredible because both of us were ready. But that ontmoeting only came because I held on so long. And I waited and I waited and I waited until everything was healthy. Everything was aligned.
Yeah.
Everything was, and by letting go.
Yeah.
By totally letting go and putting myself in an environment where I wasn't Jimmy. And I didn't have a camera. And I didn't have the right color. And I didn't have any wealth. I was just my soul. But somebody saw that and I saw it in return.
And with all respect to everything you went through in your early years, why do you think it still took 50 years to eventually start really loving yourself?
Because what I went through was so extreme.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you have 2 years of, and you mentioned it at the very beginning, sexual abuse, you disconnect from your body.
Yeah.
And that's about alignment.
Yeah.
And that's what these people have. They're connected. Look at them. There's a sort of, and in that disconnection, there's a massive hole and a void. And for many years, and many of us do that, we fill it with things because we don't want to feel the emptiness. But you can't fill it with anything except love and saying it's fine, you're fine. And because of that extreme experience, it took an extreme amount of time and work.
Yeah.
And because I'm resilient and I'm disciplined and I'm not stupid, you can wear disguises and you can allemaal praatjes om daar overheen te komen.
Yeah.
But until you totally submit and admit and feel that emptiness, you can't connect here, but you can't connect with yourself. So everybody goes, knap al die jaren, hoe maak je een verbinding? And by submitting, by letting go.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's so you're on a creative path. You instinctively feel you have a fire. You have to see and record and share. Trust it. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit sort of Buddhist, but it is just submit to the process. Submit to the passage of time. It becomes inconsequential because if it lasts one day or it lasts 40 years, you should be doing exactly what you want Yeah, and this environment is difficult to do that in because it's all about bills and rules and signs and forms and the digital and status. Yeah, but that's also that gets easier in time.
Yeah,
you fall off that. You become just yourself.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, like you mentioned, you're doing the right thing, and I just hope I just don't only do it to fill up my emptiness.
I think at the beginning you do anyway. Het hoort erbij. But you just have to deal with it and analyze it and be aware of it and share it and talk about it. Don't hide it.
That's the first step.
Don't hide it. And then be inspired by others. I have upstairs an abundance of books of other creative journeys, fascinated by how people did things and why they see this and why they paint that and why they sing this and why they write that. That's very thrilling. So being inspired by other artists. And I think more too often everybody becomes, afraid or intimidated. It's been done before, I can't or I can. Well, it doesn't matter. You can become you, the authentic you. So the simplest, if you bring it back to the making of a picture, everybody comes here, not everybody, the majority of people, what camera should I buy? And how long should the lens be? And I always say that's the wrong question to ask. It's who am I? What's my authenticity? Where am I from and where am I going to? And once I can begin to define and align with that, that's when I know the story I'm going to tell. And that's when I choose a medium to tell it with. And that's when it becomes sustainable. But it takes time. Before you get there, you have to pay the gas en licht. Je moet een paar baby's fotograferen, af en toe een huwelijk, een beetje dit, af en toe een podcast. Maar the source is you're going to make something.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Good luck with diving into this new world you're about to go.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your conversation. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your patience.
Of
thank
course.
you for doing this again.
I love talking to you again. And it also, I think I got to know you even better. And you inspired me again so much.
Thank you. En dankjewel voor je geduld met de Engels. En ik hoop dat iedereen heeft dit kunnen volgen. Met mijn Dinglish. Ja. en als je het niet gevolgd hebt, het is een gevoel, passie. Daar gaat het om. Nothing more, nothing less. Ja. And energy. Yeah. One last story. Yeah, it's one last story before that. Many years ago, a guy came to me and he was knocking on my door and said, "Can I be your assistant?"
Yeah.
And I said, ik heb het niet druk. En analoog, digitaal, alles stortte in. And then he kept knocking. Mm-hmm. And then one day I said, kun je de hond even uitlaten? En kun je een beetje boodschappen doen? En ik heb ook 3 kleine kinderen, kun je even oppassen? And then slowly we began a relationship.
Yeah.
He was from Johannesburg in South Africa. He had come to Amsterdam for a year. He had rented een zolderverdieping in Ouderkerk. Hij had een hele oude fiets. En zijn doel was om zoveel geld mogelijk te verdienen en sparen. Om weer terug naar Johannesburg te gaan. In 1 year he worked with 6 photographers. And he worked 20 hours a day. And he went back with, denk ik, €40,000 of zoiets. Vrij veel geld voor een jonge jochie. He went back, he got married, bought a studio. And he's still a photographer today in Johannesburg. But the grap was, he's a shitty photographer. But everybody likes him. I liked him. The other 5 photographers liked him. His wife likes him. His kids like him. His clients like him. Mm. And that's his passion. Mm. And he knows he's not very good. But he loves being with people and people love being with him. So iedereen gunt hem de werk. So you can also be the best technical photographer in the world with your analog camera and everything. But if it's people you're dealing with, if you don't love people as much, they will never love you in return. And 99% of people who say, ik heb moeite om verbinding te maken met een foto van een mens, is because you're not submitting yourself and you're not loving the subject. Every single person I sit in front of, fuck, this is beautiful.
Go enjoy that process, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's very clear to me, and I'm very excited to do that even more in my life.
Go for it. And je hebt alle jaren.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, but you do. Yeah, but I mean, and if today is the last day, you're in it. You're sitting here. You initiated a conversation with me. Thank you very much. Heel lief.
Yes.
I hope at least one person listens, and
of course,
that in itself is rich.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So also to everyone that has been listening or watching, it's been a true pleasure for me to speak again with Jimmy. I hope it inspired you too, to dive into yourself, to become the most authentic version of yourself and to go on that journey. So thank you for watching.
Yeah, and celebrate the beauty of life, and it's everywhere. But just dare. Yeah.
Celebrate the beauty of life.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.